Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp when she spoke. "Tomorrow, my sister will come. You will help her gain experience with males." He almost dropped the cup in his hand. The steam from the drink curled between them, and the small alien house felt suddenly too quiet. Her ridged brow was relaxed, but there was no hint of a joke in her face. He set the cup down slowly. "What?" The word came out like a whisper, but she didn't look away. She folded her arms across her chest, the golden bands on her forearms glinting in the soft lantern light. She explained in steady words about her people's tradition, that before a young female could take her place in the clan, she must spend time with a male to learn, to understand. It was not romance, not love, she said. It was duty. The air between them grew heavy. He tried to laugh, thinking it was a strange kind of alien humor, but her eyes didn't soften. He asked if there was no other way, and she tilted her head slightly, the way she did when confused by human reluctance. She spoke again, saying that refusal would bring dishonor, not just to her sister, but to her own standing in the clan. That dishonor would fall on him, too. He rubbed the back of his neck. His first weeks here as her husband had already been strange. Different foods, different customs, different air that smelled faintly of iron, but this was beyond anything he expected. She watched him, her long tail flicking against the floor, waiting for his answer. He felt the pull of her culture pressing against his human instincts, and the weight of her family's honor settling on his shoulders. Outside, wind scraped dust against the windows. He could hear the night animals calling in the distance. The sound seemed sharper tonight, as if the whole planet was holding its breath. He asked her how old her sister was. She answered without hesitation, a number that in human years would make her barely an adult. That answer made his stomach knot tighter. Her hand touched his arm, not gently but firmly, the way warriors reassured each other before battle. She said her sister had been sheltered, kept away from dangerous males of their kind. She had no real experience with any, and that left her vulnerable. This tradition was, in her mind, also a form of protection. By staying with him, her sister would learn what it meant to be with a male who could be trusted. He turned to the window. In the moonlight, the alien settlement lay still. Small lights blinked from far-off watchtowers, and the mountains cut black shapes against the stars. He wondered if someone out there was watching their home already. The thought came uninvited and refused to leave. Her voice pulled him back. She promised there would be no shame in it, no danger to their bond. In her eyes, this was like training before a hunt, like preparing a weapon for battle. He was part of her family now, and her sister's safety was his responsibility too. He searched her face for any sign of trickery, but found none. Still, his mind kept circling the possibility that this was some kind of test. Maybe her clan wanted to see if he was loyal, if he respected their ways. Or maybe it was a trap, one wrong move and he'd be accused of dishonor. She stepped closer, the scent of her skin carrying that faint metallic note he'd grown used to. "She will arrive at first light," she said. "I expect you to welcome her." Then she left him standing in the center of the room, the shadows stretching long across the floor. The fire in the corner burned low, its glow painting the walls in restless shapes. He sat down, elbows on his knees, and stared at the floor. Sleep seemed impossible now. Questions swirled in his head. What would this sister be like? What would she expect? And who else might be watching from the dark? Outside, a faint crunch of footsteps drifted through the night air. He froze, every muscle tight, and turned his head toward the sound. The steps were slow, deliberate, then stopped. He waited, listening, but heard nothing more. When he finally moved, it was only to place the heavy iron bar across the door. The faint wind carried a strange scent inside, something sharp and unfamiliar. He wondered if it belonged to her sister, or to someone else entirely. The night stretched on, and he sat in silence, knowing that when the first light came, so would the test that might decide his place in this alien world. The first rays of the alien sun spilled across the hills when a shadow appeared at the edge of the path. A tall figure walked toward the house, her steps steady, her long cloak shifting with the wind. She carried no bag, no weapon in sight, but the way her eyes scanned the surroundings spoke of caution. Her skin was lighter than his wife's, with faint silver markings that caught the morning light. She stopped at the doorway, her gaze fixed on him. For a moment, neither moved. Then she bowed, a stiff, formal motion that felt more like a soldier's gesture than a greeting. Her voice was quiet but sharp when she said his name, testing how it sounded. His wife appeared behind him, her face calm, but her tail curling in a way he had learned meant she was pleased. She placed a hand on her sister's shoulder and guided her inside. The air changed instantly, warmer, heavier. The younger sister's eyes roamed the room, lingering on the shelves, the fire, the weapons mounted on the far wall. At the table, they sat together. The wife prepared food, and the smell of seared root vegetables mixed with the sharper scent of alien spices. The younger sister barely touched her plate at first, watching him instead. Her gaze was intense, almost scientific, as though she were mapping every detail of his face. Her first question came without warning. Do humans fight with teeth or with tools? The piece of bread in his hand paused halfway to his mouth. He answered simply, but her next question came before he could swallow. If I were your enemy, how long would it take you to make me submit? The words made his wife chuckle softly, though she hid it behind a drink. He kept his tone even, telling her it would depend on her strength and her skill. She nodded, as if filing the answer away. Outside the window, a shape moved far in the distance. At first, it could have been a worker passing by, but the figure stopped and seemed to turn toward the house. He glanced at his wife, but she was focused on her sister. The younger one asked about human endurance, about how long he could go without food, water, or rest. Her curiosity had no shame, no hesitation. She leaned forward at times, her silver markings shifting as her muscles moved beneath her skin. Every answer he gave was met with a slow nod, the bait as if she were adding pieces to a puzzle. When the meal ended, his wife suggested showing her sister the training yard behind the house. The space was bare dirt, enclosed by tall wooden posts. He had built it to keep himself in shape, but now it felt like a stage. The younger sister stepped inside, letting the wind catch her cloak before she tossed it aside, revealing the lean muscle beneath. She circled him, eyes never leaving his. Then she lunged, not with full strength, but with speed meant to surprise. He sidestepped, catching her wrist before she could twist away. Her breath caught, but she didn't resist. Instead, she studied his grip, tilting her head as if learning something important. For the next hour, they moved in bursts, her attacking, him defending, sometimes reversing the moment so quickly she ended up on the ground before she knew it. Each time she fell, she stood again, brushing dirt from her skin with a quiet, determined look. The wife leaned on the fence, watching closely. There was no jealousy in her eyes, only calculation, as though measuring how quickly her sister learned. When the training paused, they shared water. The younger sister's questions returned, now about human senses, how well he could hear in the dark, how far he could see in a storm. He answered with short truths, never giving more than needed. A faint glint caught his eye on the ridge beyond the field, something metallic. He pretended not to notice, but his senses sharpened. Whoever was watching hadn't moved since morning. As the sun dipped lower, they returned inside. The younger sister inspected the door locks, the window bars, even the weapons rack. She asked him which blade he would choose if the house was attacked at night. When he pointed, she studied the weapon for a long time, then set it back in its place with care. That night, they ate in quieter tones. The wife spoke of family history, the battles fought and alliances broken. The younger sister listened, but her eyes still flicked to him often, as if gauging whether he belonged in those stories. When darkness settled, a sudden noise came from outside, a crunch of gravel, then silence. He moved to the window, but the yard was empty. His wife's eyes narrowed, her tail lashing once before she forced it still. The younger sister stood behind him, so close he could feel her breath on his shoulder. "They are watching," she said, voice low, almost a whisper. It wasn't a question. He met her gaze and for the first time saw no challenge there, only warning. The night air was heavy, the sound of the insects outside louder than usual. He sat at the table, cleaning the edge of his knife, when the low voices began in the next room. His wife and her sister spoke in quick, hushed tones, their alien language a rolling rhythm he could not fully understand. Still, a few words slipped into common speech. Test, loyalty, protection. Each one sharpened the edge of his unease. He kept his hands steady, moving the cloth along the blade, while his ears strained to catch more. The younger sister's tone was tense, almost urgent, while the wife's was calm but firm, like someone making promises they intended to keep. He caught the faint shuffle of feet, then the whisper of cloth as someone sat down hard on the floor. The door creaked softly, and the younger sister stepped into the dim light, her silver markings faint in the glow from the fire. She glanced at him, then looked away, as if weighing whether to speak. Finally, she sat opposite him, hands flat on the table. "They will come for me," she said, voice low but certain. She explained that a rival clan leader wanted her for himself, not out of desire, but to use her as a bargaining piece in an old feud. She was considered valuable because of her bloodline and the fact she had never been with a male. Her clan's honor tied directly to her untouched status, but so did her vulnerability. He listened without interrupting, his mind piecing together the strange request from his wife. The tradition was not only about experience, it was a shield, a way to hide her from those who would claim her. If she was seen as already bound, already in the care of a male, the rival leader's claim would lose its weight. She met his eyes for the first time and didn't look away. "If they take me, it will start a war. My sister believes you can stop that." The words settled heavily in the room. He asked why she believed he could do what her own warriors could not. Her answer was simple. "You are not part of our politics. You have no alliances they can twist, and you do not fear them like our own kind does." A soft scrape came from outside, like a boot sliding on gravel. His hand went to the knife on the table. The younger sister's eyes flicked to the door, but she didn't move. The sound stopped as suddenly as it had started, leaving only the hum of night insects. His wife entered carrying a pot of heated drink and set it down between them. She looked at her sister, then at him. "It is decided," she said. "You will keep her close. If anyone asks, she is under your protection, and she is already learning the ways of a male she trusts." He leaned back in his chair, staring at the fire. The role was dangerous. If the rival clan decided to challenge him, there would be no rules to protect him. But refusing could mean worse. The younger sister reached for the cup, her fingers brushing his. There was no softness in the touch, only an unspoken agreement. She was not here for comfort. She was here for survival. Later, when the house was quiet, he stood at the window, watching the dark hills. A faint flicker of movement caught his eye, someone slipping between shadows near the far fence. He let the curtain fall, forcing his heartbeat to slow. Tomorrow, he would need to check the fence lines. In the other room, low whispers started again, but now they were calmer, almost like planning. He caught the word dawn and the phrase training yard before the voices faded. He didn't know what they had in mind, but he felt the shape of coming trouble, steady and certain. He lay down without undressing, the knife resting on the table beside the bed. Sleep came late in short bursts, each one broken by some imagined sound. Once, he thought he saw a shadow move across the window, but when he sat up, the night was still. The scent of the alien air filled his lungs, metallic and sharp. Somewhere beyond the hills, someone was making plans of their own. The market was loud with shouts, the smell of cooked meat and alien spices drifting through the warm air. He walked between the stalls with the sisters beside him, his eyes scanning the crowd. The younger one stayed close, her gaze moving quickly over every face. His wife's tail swayed slowly, a calm motion that hid her alertness. They stopped at a stall selling dried root packs. While his wife bargained with the seller, the younger sister picked up a strange curved fruit, turning it over in her hands. A shadow fell across the table. 3 tall aliens stood there, their armor dark and marked with the crest of the rival clan. The largest of them smiled without warmth. "So this is the human," the leader said, his voice carrying above the noise, "the one hiding our prize." His eyes slid to the younger sister, and his smile grew. She froze, her fingers tightening on the fruit until it cracked. The leader stepped closer. "Give her to us, and we will not harm you. Humans have no place in our disputes." His tone was mocking, certain of his power. The other 2 spread slightly, cutting off the path behind them. He didn't move back. "She is under my protection," he said, his voice steady. The leader's grin faded. "Protection? From you?" The words dripped with disbelief. The younger sister shifted behind him, her eyes fixed on the leader's hands. The air between them thickened. He kept his stance relaxed but ready. "Walk away," he said. "You don't want this fight here." The leader laughed, a sharp, unpleasant sound. I want it anywhere I can get it. A crowd was forming. Some shoppers whispered, others backed away. He stepped sideways, forcing the leader to adjust. Every time the alien tried to move closer to the younger sister, he shifted to block the path. The leader's frustration showed in the twitch of his jaw. His wife moved suddenly, placing herself at his shoulder. Her voice was cold as she spoke in her native tongue, reminding the leader of the law. Fights in the market without challenge rights could bring punishment from the elders. The leader hesitated, then spat on the ground. This is not over, he said. They turned and walked away, their armor catching the sun in sharp flashes. The crowd slowly broke apart, and the market noise returned as if nothing had happened. The younger sister's shoulders relaxed, but her eyes were still locked on the path the rivals had taken. They will try again, she said quietly. He nodded, knowing she was right. They finished their shopping quickly. On the walk back, he stayed close to the sisters, watching every alley and rooftop. Twice he thought he saw movement, but when he turned, nothing was there. At the house, the younger sister went straight to the training yard without speaking. She tossed aside her cloak and took up a wooden practice staff. He joined her, and without a word, they began to move, her striking, him blocking, then reversing. Each blow she delivered was sharper than the last, fueled by the encounter at the market. He could feel her frustration in every swing. When she finally lost her footing, he caught her before she hit the ground. She pushed away quickly, anger in her eyes, but not at him. His wife watched from the fence, her arms folded. Now she understands, she said. The enemy will not stop. You must be ready together. The younger sister's breathing slowed, and she nodded once. They trained until the light faded from the sky, the sound of their movements filling the quiet air. That night, he sharpened his knife while the sisters spoke softly by the fire. Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of dust and metal. Somewhere out there, the rival clan was making its own plans, and the next meeting would not end with words. The creak of wood woke him. A faint rustle followed, too controlled to be the wind. He sat up, hand closing around the knife beside the bed. The sisters were already awake, their silhouettes sharp against the dim glow from the hearth. His wife's tale was still, a sign of focused listening. The younger sister's eyes were fixed on the door. Another sound came, softer this time, the slow slide of metal against metal. Someone was testing the lock. He moved silently, stepping across the room until his back was against the wall beside the entrance. His wife handed him a short blade without a word. The door latch shifted. A thin line of cold air slipped inside. Then the wood swung inward, and three shadowed figures stepped through, their movements quick and certain. The first carried a curved blade, the second a short spear, the third some kind of shock device that hummed faintly in the dark. He struck before they could fully enter, driving his shoulder into the nearest one and sending them crashing into the table. The wood splintered under the impact. The younger sister moved instantly, grabbing a fire poker and swinging it hard into the second intruder's side. A sharp grunt followed, and the spear clattered to the floor. The third attacker lunged toward her, but the human intercepted, catching the wrist holding the shock device. The weapon sparked, the smell of burnt metal filling the air. He twisted sharply, forcing the attacker to drop it. The younger sister kicked it across the floor out of reach. One of the intruders regained footing and came at him again. He ducked the swing of the curved blade, stepped in close, and slammed the pommel of his knife into the alien's temple. The body went limp and dropped. The second, still winded from the poker strike, stumbled back toward the open door. The youngest sister's breathing was fast but steady. She shifted her stance like a trained fighter, eyes locked on the last standing opponent. The alien hesitated, glancing between them, then turned and bolted into the night. His wife closed the door hard and dropped the bar across it. The house was silent except for their breathing. The younger sister's hands shook slightly as she set the poker down, but her eyes were bright, focused. She met his gaze without speaking, and in that moment, he saw the change, her fear replaced by something closer to resolve. They checked the bodies. The unconscious one wore the insignia of the rival clan. The second had escaped. The shock weapon lay on the floor, still sparking weakly. His wife picked it up, studied it, then tossed it into the fire. The smell of burning circuits filled the room. They dragged the unconscious attacker to the far corner of the training yard and tied him to a post. When he woke, dawn was breaking. The human stood in front of him, arms crossed, while the sisters watched from the side. "Why come here?" he asked. The alien spat blood onto the ground. Orders, was all he said. The wife stepped forward, speaking in their native tongue. Her voice was cold, sharp. The prisoner's eyes flicked toward the younger sister before looking away. The human understood enough. The rival clan wanted her taken alive. They had sent these three to test the house's defenses and his resolve. The prisoner gave no other useful answer, even when pressed. Finally, the wife stepped back and nodded once. The human cut the ropes and let the intruder limp away into the hills. The rest of the day passed in tense silence. The younger sisters spent hours in the training yard, repeating moves they had practiced, each strike harder than the last. The human joined her, correcting her stance, showing how to use an opponent's weight against them. By sunset, sweat glistened on her skin, and her breathing came in ragged bursts. She leaned on her staff, looking toward the hills as if expecting to see movement. He followed her gaze. Somewhere out there, more would be coming, and next time they might bring enough force to overwhelm. Inside, the fire crackled low. His wife poured water into 3 cups and set them down. She said nothing, but her eyes carried a message. They had passed one test, but the real fight was still ahead. The sound of heavy steps echoed across the yard long before the figure appeared. The rival clan leader walked at the front of a small group, his armor gleaming in the midday sun. Behind him were 6 warriors, each armed and watching the house with cold eyes. The sisters stood at the window, their tails stiff, their silence sharper than any weapon. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him. The dirt crunched under his boots as he crossed the yard to meet them halfway. The leader stopped, his expression unreadable, though the faint curl of his lip hinted at disdain. "You have something that belongs to me," the leader said. His voice was deep, almost calm. "Step aside, and I will let you leave unharmed." His gaze shifted toward the house for only a second, enough to make the younger sister stiffen inside. "She's not yours," the human replied, his tone flat, "and she's not leaving with you." The leader's eyes narrowed. "A human, daring to speak of what is mine. Do you think your kind can stand against us?" "Try me," he said. No raised voice, no insult, just a quiet challenge that carried in the still air. The warriors spread out, forming a half circle. His hands stayed loose at his sides, but his stance was ready. The leader stepped forward, removing his helmet. Scars crossed his jaw, and his eyes burned with the confidence of someone who had never been refused. "You could have walked away," the leader said. "Now you will kneel." The first strike came fast, the leader's fists swinging toward his head. He ducked under it, pivoted, and drove his shoulder into the alien's ribs. The impact made the leader grunt, but he stayed upright. They circled each other, the dust rising around their feet. The second exchange was harsher. The leader aimed a low kick, but the human caught the leg and twisted, forcing the alien to stumble. He pressed forward, landing 2 quick strikes to the torso before the leader shoved him back. The watching warriors shouted, urging their leader on. The human ignored them, his focus locked on the man in front of him. The leader swung again, this time catching his arm in a hard grip. They grappled, muscles straining, each trying to force the other to the ground. He used a sudden shift of weight, stepping aside and pulling, sending the leader off balance. The alien crashed into the dirt, but rolled quickly to his feet, breathing harder now. From the corner of his eye, the human saw the younger sister watching from the doorway, her hands clenched into fists. The wife stood beside her, calm but tense, ready to act if needed. The leader charged again, but this time the human sidestepped, catching him across the jaw with a sharp strike. The crowd of warriors went silent for a moment. The leader spat blood into the dust, then lunged one last time. They collided hard, both nearly falling. The human hooked an arm around the leader's neck, pulling him into a tight hold. The alien fought, but the grip only tightened. The fight ended when the leader's hand tapped against his arm, a signal of surrender. He released him and stepped back. The leader staggered, breathing heavily, his pride wounded far more than his body. The silence in the yard stretched until one of the warriors stepped forward, as if to challenge him next. The leader raised a hand to stop him. "This is not over," the leader said, his voice raw. But today, you walk away." He turned sharply and the warriors followed, their armor clinking as they disappeared into the distance. The humans stood in the yard until they were gone. When he turned toward the house, the younger sister's expression had changed. There was no doubt in her eyes now, only respect and something deeper that hadn't been there before. Inside, his wife closed the door and set the bar in place. "You have done more than protect her," she said quietly. "You have changed how they see us." He poured water into a cup, his hands steady despite the fight. The air inside felt lighter, but he knew this wasn't the end. Out there, the leader's pride was bleeding, and sooner or later, he would come back. The morning after the fight was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt heavy rather than peaceful. The younger sister moved around the kitchen, her steps slower than usual. She placed a cup in front of him and sat across the table without speaking. Her silver markings caught the pale light through the window, and for a long moment she simply studied his face. "You could have given me to them," she said finally. "It would have been easier." Her voice was steady, but there was a tightness beneath the words. "It wouldn't have been right," he replied. She looked away, her jaw tense. "In my clan, strength is measured by who you can protect. You have passed their measure, even if they will never admit it." His wife entered the room, setting down a bundle wrapped in cloth. She unrolled it to reveal a small crest carved from bone. It was the sign of clan protection, a mark that told others the bearer was under the shield of a powerful family. She placed it in front of him. "It is yours now, and so is she," she said, nodding toward her sister. The younger one straightened, her eyes widening. "Sister," she began, but stopped when the wife raised a hand. "You will return to the clan," the wife said. "You will take your place as you should have before they came for you, but you will not forget who stood between you and them." They spent the day preparing. The younger sister gathered her few belongings, packing them into a small leather bag. She trained in the yard one last time, moving through the drills with a focus that made her movements sharper than ever. He corrected her grip once, and she smiled faintly, the first real smile he had seen from her. As the sun dropped low, the three of them stood at the gate. The path back to her clan wound through the hills, where shadows stretched long and deep. She adjusted the strap of her bag and looked at him. "If the day comes that you call, I will come," she said. "It does not matter where I am." He nodded, and they clasped forearms in the warrior's grip she had taught him. Her hand was firm, her gaze unwavering. She turned to her sister, embracing her tightly, the way those who have shared danger do. Then she walked down the path, not once looking back. The house felt larger without her presence, but also emptier. That night he sat by the fire, the bone crest lying on the table beside him. His wife sat across from him, watching the flames. "You thought this was only about a tradition," she said. But it was more. She needed to see what kind of male could be trusted. Now she knows. The wind outside shifted, carrying the scent of rain. He thought of the younger sister walking alone into the hills, confident in her steps because she had learned what it meant to be defended without being owned. In the following days, the market vendors greeted him differently. Some nodded with respect, others stepped aside without a word. The story of the fight with the rival leader had spread quickly, and with it, the knowledge that he was not a man to be pushed aside. One afternoon, a messenger arrived from the younger sister's clan. The message was short. She had taken her rightful position, and no one had dared challenge her claim. At the bottom was a single line written in her own hand. "The shield you gave me is stronger than steel." He folded the note carefully and placed it inside the bone crest's wrapping. That night, he set it on the shelf above the hearth, where the firelight made it glow faintly. His wife saw him do it, but said nothing. The days returned to a calmer rhythm, yet every so often he would glance toward the hills, wondering if he might see a silver-marked figure walking back toward the house. When that thought came, it was not with dread, but with the quiet certainty that if she did return, it would mean another storm was coming, and that they would face it together.